meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School Board to order. This is the June 30th, 2022 meeting. Let's start with our roll call.
Director Albers, not here. Director Alcatuch,
Here.
Director Bell is also not here. Director Dayton,
Here.
Director Eberhard is not here. Director Height,
Here.
Director Ivan is not here. Director Kuitzinger,
Here.
Director Linnell,
Here.
Director Müller,
Here.
Director Roth-Josvik,
Here.
and ex-officio member Executive Director Christensen.
Here. Excellent, thank you. We'll start our meeting with our mission, vision, and values. The mission of the Twin Cities German Immersion School is the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is andere hören, andere sehen, Weltoffen denken und handeln. And our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, intercultural engagement, and community. All right. We have a full agenda, so I think we'll jump right in with our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have approval of 2 meeting reports, the Committee of the Whole and Fundraising, as well as the approval of the Campus Planning Committee Charter. I'll ask for unanimous consent to accept and approve the consent agenda. Any objections? All right, agenda is approved. Thank you. So we didn't have letters to respond to that were public this year or this month, but Lisa did send a very nice letter to our incoming board members, and that is included in our packet. And that brings us to open forum this evening. Let's see, do we have any guests? Welcome, Wandy, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Don't look like we have any guests that, well, let's see, we have 2 in person. Is there anybody that would like to address the board in open forum? All right, I will close the open forum portion of the evening. So first item on our agenda is our special recognition. As always, we have another month full of volunteers and staff that went above and beyond. So we'd like to recognize them as a board. We'll start with the Capstone Planning. Dr. Christensen.
Yeah, so the picture you see here is not a picture that we typically associate with Capstone. Capstone, we think of Berlin. This is Chicago. Capstone, the Capstone Planning Committee planned 2 capstones this year. They probably got about 2/3 of the way into the planning for the Berlin trip before we needed to scuttle it, much to our dismay. And then literally turned around and pulled a new trip out of their hat, one that we've never done before. I think it was a really meaningful and fun trip for the kids from all reports. So really, really grateful to them for planning 2 trips. One, Katarina said multiple times that Berlin was far easier to plan because she knew it. And Chicago, even though she's been there many times, it's not a place she's done group travel arrangements for. So kind of amazing that just on a dime, essentially, they were able to plan a trip to make up for the kids' loss and provide something that was meaningful and memorable to them. So thanks very much to Katarina Scheer, Elizabeth Sinfini, and Esther Noy for all of the amazing planning they did.
Next, we'd like to recognize the Capstone Chaperones.
What a great picture. They survived the bus. Katie Jacobs, you see there in the front, Deanna Erwin just behind her on the left. No idea where the others are hiding. Yasmin Josvik, Kevin Eberhard. So Kevin actually wasn't able to go, but was willing. And Elizabeth St. Benny, our intrepid middle school dean. So thanks to all of them for being there for the kids and supporting them and remembering what it's like to be 13 again.
Mhm. Thank you. Do you have any comments you want to share, Yasmin, about the trip?
Oh, it's a great trip.
Yeah.
Wish it happened earlier.
I'm glad you had fun. All right, next we recognize our graduation planning committee. And I'll recognize Elizabeth Senfenig, Yasmin Roth-Jostig, Katie Jacobs, Lara Hamar, John Dahl, Sam Graf, Kirsten Christensen, Esther Noy, and Jenna Powell. I had the pleasure of attending the graduation ceremony, and it took place in our beautiful gymnasium. Was a lovely setting and very well done, with several speakers and awards given out to some of the 8th graders. And everything was amazing, and it was a proud day to be there and see all these kids walking across and shaking hands and getting their diplomas. So thank you for all the work that went into planning that. And in conjunction with the graduation, we had several parent volunteers who helped, and Director Linnell. Yes, that's great.
Our graduation volunteers and reception hosts. First, we have a group of 7th grade parents that help do a lot of the reception setup and hosting and tear down to give 8th grade parents the opportunity to spend their time with their graduates. So greatly appreciate them. Brenda Van Dyke, Julie Rovers, Jessica Gallo, Cynthia Miller, and Jenny Strom. They put on a really nice thing out in, it was nice enough to go outside. It was not super hot. We were able to be outside in the playground one last time with our graduates, have a donut, talk to educators as we were leaving, take photos with one another, take photos with you. It was very, very sweet.
And snow cones.
And snow cones, I forgot about the snow cones, yes. And our parent volunteers for 8th grade, Rosanna Eamholt, Maureen Carlisle, Stacy Flanagan, Jenny Pope, Nancy Rezitar, Erin Sutton, and Joyce Terrell put together fantastic posters of the kids. And they asked for photos of them as kindergartners sometime along the way in their journey, and then this year as 8th graders. So we could see that progression on these wonderful posters, which we all got to take home. And they also put together a slideshow, which the kids were upstairs in the cafeteria just dying watching and laughing at one another in good spirits, not mean. So it was very sweet. A lot of work went into that. There are more than 50 kids in the 8th grade. That's a lot of photos to organize. So it was a long slideshow and they did a wonderful job. So thank you to all of them. They made the day very, very special.
Next, we're recognizing the dance organizers. So this was the first middle school dance that I can recall. I think Zilka's son, back in the day, they had a dance perhaps, but
I don't remember.
you don't remember?
I remember high school dances way more.
So this was another special way that we got to use the new Sporthalle, converting it into a dance and disco, with a disco ball actually hanging from the ceiling. I think last time we recognized the DJs that volunteered their time and set that all up for us. But today we're recognizing Elizabeth Senfenig, Emily Albers, and Mary Henry for really doing all the coordination to make that happen. And I know my 5th grader attended and had a blast, and the theme was Hollywood, was it? Or like, something like that. He wore shades. He was cool.
I can tell you that Dean St. Benedict told me that it was one of the first questions she got, and it's one of the first questions I got. The first question I got was, can we get a trampoline at the school? And the second question I got from students was, can we have a dance, a middle school dance at the very beginning of the year? And this was when everything was still unfolding and masks, and we just had no idea, so we couldn't promise it. So the fact that we could pull it off was a huge emotional win
Mhm.
for our kids. And Elizabeth said her proudest moment was embarrassing the kids by dancing. Along with Laura Hammer, who's not listed here, but she was one of the chaperones, and there might have been others, so.
That's great. Yeah, and they had one dance for the 5th and 6th graders and a second dance for the 7th and 8th graders. So it was all really well coordinated and thought out. So thank you so much for making that happen. Finally, we'll recognize the chaperones. Director Christensen.
Here they are. Speaking of intrepid. John Dahl, Emily Albers, Mary Henry, Rachel Schley, Chris Tabish, Laura Hammer, Jenna Powell, and Deanna Aragon. Who chaperoned. I don't know, you need to say much more than that.
Brave the heat.
They braved the heat, they braved the sweat, they braved the
And
craziness, and
they gave up their Friday evening to hang out with
their Friday
middle
evening.
schoolers. So
There was a lot of joy out of that.
that was
so
really
they
fantastic of them.
They were happy to be there.
All right.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course, go for it.
I want to thank Yulia for putting together all these slides this year. You did a wonderful job of really upping the beauty of this, this event with your visual slides and putting them together every month for us. So thank you. You've really elevated this portion of the board meeting.
She also elevated our entire room. I mean, she set this up today and then sent me a picture and I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So thank you, Yulia. All right. Next we have finance and facilities.
Is Brenda on yet?
I don't
Are
see
you in the
Brenda.
meeting? I
Are we
think
ahead?
I sent her the agenda. Yeah, we're like 7 minutes ahead.
We're a little ahead of schedule, so it might be.
All right. How about we jump to governance and leadership development and then come back once we have Brenda on, since she's the presenter.
Is Emily here?
No, can you please fill in for her?
Sure.
That was in an email today.
Okay. I was revisited it. I've not seen my email yet, so.
That's okay.
Okay, at governance and leadership development, we had a couple of things, and we have a couple of action items coming out of that. First of all, we made some changes to our bylaws based on what we expect to do with the officers for the coming year. I am currently vice chair and administrative liaison. Emily Albers is going to be vice chair next year. And because one of the roles of administrative liaison is to give the performance review to the executive director, we are going to decouple those, and we are going to have the administrative liaison role rotate through the officers as needed. So for next year, Megan Dayton was we're tentatively going to be our secretary. Next year will be the administrative liaison, and Emily will be the vice chair without that role of providing the performance review. We had to update our bylaws because those have in our bylaws been put together in one role. So that is a change that we made. We also have action to consider the new zero waste policy. And this was developed actually out of mission and school culture a year ago to think about how we think more holistically about the materials coming into and going out of our building, how we are planful, mindful about the resources that we use, how we can take a European-minded approach to waste and think about where we want to be as a community, the messages that we want to give for events, how we want to speak to parents about thinking about buying for supplies for their kids or for their teachers. So this policy is considered kind of a first step toward a broader conversation about how we become a more sustainable school and what ways that we can do that. Some things that we talked about after the development of this policy was, how do we think about energy use? How do we think about water use? How do we think about the campus planning so that we become a more sustainable campus? So the policy that we're approving tonight focuses very much on some waste that we can all work on together and lays the foundation for how we think about bigger things to come. So I'll have two actions to approve. First, I ask, can I just do this by unanimous consent, or do we want to vote? I'll do unanimous consent. I ask for unanimous consent to update the bylaws to separate the roles of administrative liaison and vice chair.
Any objections?
Wonderful. All right. And second, I ask unanimous consent to adopt the new zero waste policy for TCGIS.
Any objections? All right, policy is approved. Nice work.
I think as long as we're thanking people, I think Lisa deserves a special thanks for the zero waste policy, because I know how much work went into it and it's a passion of yours. So thanks.
Yep. Symbolic that it's approved on your last day.
Hey, while I'm on a roll, I can go ahead and do mission and school culture.
Sounds great. We're still waiting for Brenda's.
All right. So mission and school culture has been the committee that I've led for the last 3 years. It had a different name. My first year, it's been mission and school culture for the last 2 years. And it's really been in an umbrella place where the board and staff and parents can talk about a wide variety of issues about how to improve our school and bring more people involved to get involved in how we improve the experience for everyone, starting with the students, but also how do we grow community together? And Chris Tavish has been a really great thought partner in this committee along the way. What we talked about, unfortunately, at this last meeting, this is an awkward segue because we are actually going to take the work that has been living under mission and school culture and move it to other committees so that we are not necessarily going to have another meeting to go to, but we're going to make sure that all these priorities that we have nurtured in this committee for the last 3 years will live on in other spots in the board committees that we think makes a ton of sense. So first of all, the Curriculum Advisory Committee, led by Esther Noy. This has been a wonderful success that we've been able to look at the requirements from the state, what we need to do to meet the mandates of the state under World's Best Workforce, and provide the reporting that goes along with that. It's been launched. It is now run by Esther. It lives under the umbrella of our committee, but it does not need any more stewardship from our committee. So that is going to live just under the umbrella of the executive committee so that it continues to have that tie to the board and have that line of sight between the two bodies. Similarly, the Special Education Advisory Committee, this is something that recently came to mission and school culture. It is also mandated by the state that TCGIS have a Special Education Advisory Committee. This is going to be also under executive committee. It's going to be led by either the director or the dean of special education. What we've talked, which one, Kirsten? Director. By the director of special education. This committee has operated in the past as a way for parents to have a good connection to the leader of special education at TCGIS, but we also want to make sure that as stewards of this very important part of the mission of TCGIS, that it has a clear connection back to the board, so the board can get regular updates. They have a way to do this on a regular basis. So Special Education Advisory Committee will also live under the executive committee going forward. The Zero Waste Subcommittee, which I just talked about, the natural home for this is where campus planning lives. So as part of facilities and finance, zero waste is going to live there. That'll allow the opportunity to look at waste from an operations perspective. Andy and Ashley Weston Miller have been great thought partners in how we develop even better policies to deal with the waste that needs to leave the building. For example, food waste going to a pig farm, or how do we look for grants that would help us implement better programs? How do we provide communications to teachers and staff so that they can better deal with waste, make sure it goes in the right direction? So that will live with facilities and finance. Advocacy is a great passion of mine. I came from the federal government before I moved to the private sector. And we need to be advocates for our school. We need folks involved in this community, whether they work here, are a student here, a parent here, or just interested in the mission of the school, to be able to speak to the mission and why it needs to have support, whether that support comes from the city council, it comes from the legislature. We have a connection to the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools so that we can work in coalition with other charter schools to get the message out, to bust some myths about what charter schools are in Minnesota and how they're different from other states where people may have heard horror stories about charter schools being run in a different way that are not good for kids and they're not good for public finance. So that operation is going to live under communications and outreach so that we can make sure that we are providing the right messages, making it easy for people to advocate. They can attend Charter School Advocacy Day. They can write letters to the Star Tribune. They can find other ways to tell our story. Telling our story has always been one of the mandates of the Communication and Outreach Committee. This is one way that I think we really are primed to get involved in a big way. And I'm excited about that and excited to see what you all do with that. Two more, Wellness Committee. We are mandated by the state to have a Wellness Committee. And the Wellness Committee is designed to look at, first and foremost, the school lunch program to make sure that we're meeting the requirements, but it also has a lot of other questions about how we promote wellness, especially around movement in the school. So reinstating that Wellness Committee, you have to provide reporting to the state every 3 years. So that'll be a big part of that task. But we know that we have passionate individuals around the school who want to make sure that our kids are getting the best chance to have a healthy school day and take that attitude home with them at night. So the Wellness Committee is going to live under Executive Committee. And I sent Julie the requirements from the state. There's a template to give you that starting point of what you need to have from the state and use that as a jumping off point for broader conversations about how we incorporate health, wellness, and movement for our kids. And last, volunteerism. We've talked a lot about volunteerism at Immersion and School Culture over the years, and we've had different projects, and we've also talked about the philosophy of volunteerism. How do we encourage it? How do we make sure that people know about opportunities? How do we facilitate those that want to bring new opportunities and nurture them and grow them and get other people involved? Erin Myers has been on my committee a very great advocate of this, and she's also been on the parent council and the PTO advocating for greater volunteerism and also getting feedback about what are some of the barriers, what's standing in the way. Is it lack of access? Is it background checks and the finances that go along with it? Is it just simply not knowing how to connect with people, especially people outside of your grade? So volunteerism is going to live in communication and outreach. Fits very naturally with work that is already being done there. And also Zilka has been a wonderful advocate for the alumni. We never decided if it was a task force or it was a committee or whatever it is, but in her thinking about how we engage alumni, that is very much the same type of skill set. How do you get a group of people that are excited about this school and leverage their power for greater good? So I think that it living under your committee is going to be a really great place. So thank you for that, Silvia. So I have very much enjoyed all of these projects. I've enjoyed this committee, but I am confident that all of this work is in very great hands going forward. So I thank you all for what you've done so far for the school and what you're going to be doing for the school and all these work streams.
Thank you.
We're gonna let Lisa keep rolling. Or are we gonna go back to finance?
First, I'd like to get the board's approval to make these changes to the committee. I'd like to make a motion to dissolve the Mission and School Culture Committee with all of the projects pushed to other committees as just described by Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right. And I want to mention too that Lisa is continuing to organize our garden, our summer community garden this summer, even though she's rolling off the board and has a graduate and
Can't
So-
garden to save my life, but
so I want to thank you for
And Lisa, it's
continuing
possible to
that.
continue to do that the years after that.
you have to talk to my husband.
It's an alumni opportunity. Is that what you're saying?
I like that.
Yeah. All right. We'll hand it back to Finance.
All right, we have two budgets to approve tonight. So I won't go into much detail about our last meeting. Other than we went over enrollment, our normal financial review, and reviewed the budget for this past year and for next year for a second time as a committee. And that though both those budgets will be up for approval tonight. And with that, it looks like Brenda's on. And Brenda, our amazing numbers person, is going to present both budgets for us.
Welcome, Brenda.
You already got them up.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome, Brenda. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'll try to make this really quick. I know there's a lot of numbers, but like Richard said, we've already reviewed these numbers many times, and so we feel pretty confident with what we're.
Can you turn it up?
So tonight, what we're proposing for
Maybe
the
Brenda
board.
can make it louder.
Hey, Brenda, sorry to interrupt. Is there any way you can turn your microphone up a little bit? It's fairly quiet, and I think we have our TV turned up all the way.
Hey, let me see if I can move my laptop
Yes.
closer. There we go.
What's up?
Can you hear me better now?
Not really.
Can you there on the, can we do it there on the?
No, it's coming from out of
Can you
here.
hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's just,
It has to be on that computer then. Is that the computer running?
oh,
It's coming out of that
Yeah.
speaker, that camera.
is that the one that needs to be turned up?
No, it's like this here.
Oh.
Oh, really?
I can speak really loud too, if possible. I'll just yell the numbers.
Don't lose your voice. We'll be quiet.
Okay. How's it now? Is it better?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, so tonight we're proposing the revised budget 21-22 and the proposed original budget 22-23. And so it's the two columns here that we're looking at, the blue working budget, and then the peach column is a 22-23, and we need to adopt both of these by tonight to be in compliance if we want a revised for 21-22 and an adopted for 22-23. So the biggest number that drives the gen ed revenue is the enrollment projections. And so we're at, for 21-22, we're at 598. And those March numbers are coming right out at 598. So right on budget. And then we're projecting an increase of 620 for next year. And those 620 generates for next year generates pupil units of 643. That's the driver of the state aid revenue. Going down to a summary of our state aids. State aids projections is total. Where the state aids is gen ed aid, lease aid, special ed aid, and so on. All of those gen ed aid combined, we're projecting that we'll end the fiscal year this year with $7,050,000 for the 21-22 year. And we're projecting an 8% increase for fiscal 22-23 of $7,594,000. And the biggest increase related to that is the 2% increase in state aid formula, about a 3.5% increase in enrollment, and a increase in special ed funding of about 400,000 right here. Going down to our federal funding, this year we are budgeting to spend $315,489 in federal funding. Next year we'll be budgeting $305,890. The difference why we're going down a little bit is just because we are spending a little bit less of the federal CARES funds, which are one-time funds. And so there's various buckets of those funds. And so those if not spent next year, we can roll those over, have to be spent by 22, 23, 24. So that's the reason for that change there. Total local revenues, we're budgeting 427, 176 this year. Next year, we're budgeting 545,000. The reason for that increase is because we have a St. Thomas grant and some other grants that are one-time grants next year over and above the revenue. And we're also, the capital campaign is a little bit less next year. Still undecided as far as what that grant's gonna be. Overall revenues for Gen Ed going from 7,793,000 to 8,445,000 next year. Any questions on the revenue?
Yeah, these grants that we are expecting next year, can someone update or tell me?
The grants for next year?
Yeah, what are these grants? Are they?
Okay, so we're gonna have a Ramsey County grant for recycling right here. And that's 25,800. And then we have a St. Thomas grant to help pay for interns that'll be working with us, and that's a $60,000 grant. And then we are increasing bus donations, and we also are adding back the Capstone Capstone revenue. So that's primarily the increases in those grants for next year.
So, and just to clarify, when she says interns, it's not our German interns that we typically think of. These
Right.
are
School psych interns.
school psych interns. Yep. Can you describe it a bit more?
Yeah, these are PhD students who are completing their studies, and they're doing essentially a practicum here with Carol Mecklenburg, our school psychologist, and provide extra support for our mental health team. Right? Isn't that the grant?
I think it's actually the St. Thomas one, and the teacher training, the people in teacher training.
Right. So they're working towards a teacher degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're working here as teacher assistants. I'm not sure.
So,
Like, give me an example person, I'm blanking.
Jen Powell,
No.
the St. Thomas.
Oh, is that, but I didn't know we called that a grant. That's interesting. So that's
It says St. Thomas grant.
I don't think, I didn't.
Guess what? We have our authorizer in the
So,
audience. I wonder if she could describe this program.
well, I know the charter, say, what do you say?
We call it the Charter Work and Learn Program. Is that what's being?
Well,
referred to?
it's a basically grow your own program. But I just haven't heard it referred to as a grant before, but. Okay, yeah, so we basically get money for every person who's in the program. The St. Thomas pays, so it's $60,000, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So they pay $30,000 per person. So forget the psych intern things. That's a separate program.
We do also have psych.
All right.
We do also have
That's,
psych interns, but they're not
through
being paid for University of St. Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I called it, I
haven't
think I
seen it
referred to
coded
it
as
as
a
a grant by
grant.
mistake.
Yeah, I haven't seen it coded as a grant before, so I'm just having a Thursday evening blank. I just work here. I apologize.
Maybe we need to revisit the coding.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Put it
because
on
it's
your
really-
next-
it's really
next
payroll.
agenda.
It's
Mhm.
payroll essentially, right? It's.
Mhm.
It's still local revenue. It still
Yeah,
falls
yeah,
under
yeah.
local revenue.
I don't think the code number would
Yeah,
change, but we can
doesn't matter.
change
But
the,
basically, two people that work here are going to work towards a teacher degree. Is that right? Through St. Thomas,
A master's.
Yeah.
a master's. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it allows them to do beginning in the summer, working on a degree. So it's very financially advantageous to us. And it allows us to not lose them while they go pursue their education. And it therefore makes them want to stay here.
So is it a
Right.
payroll reimbursement or is it just a funding from St. Thomas so it's expenses related to this?
Yeah, I mean, it functions as payroll reimbursement, right? Because it's money that we like whatever their salary is, it
So
covers.
then, Rich, I don't know if we talked about it, but is there an expense category for the same amount in there? when we talk, when we had the discussion a little.
The teacher,
There's none.
their teachers are part of the payroll numbers. Is their salaries as part of this teacher salaries in the expenditures. Did I answer?
It's included in that line for teachers.
Yep. mhm.
Okay.
There's a expenditure offset. There's a little bit higher expenditure. Their salaries are a little bit higher than that, the revenue that we're getting. So that expenditure is recognized in the budget.
And I believe this is the first year that program has been in existence, so we're really excited about it.
All right, any other questions on the revenue? Going into the expenditures calculations, the salaries and benefits have been calculated based on actual salary schedules and staffing. And so those are included in the matching that schedule. And then the other categories such as contracted services and other categories are based on either an inflation on the budget with increase in either cost of the inflation, which is either based on the inflation plus the enrollment growth, rate of enrollment growth, which is about 6%, 5 to 6%. Or we have increased line items based on the budget needs in that area. And so we've addressed each of these line items in the categories. And we've kind of gone over those in our meetings. Any specific areas that were increased based on possible budgeted line items, like for example, technology increases went up a little bit, and maybe dues and memberships based on memberships that we're planning to participate in next year. And then when you get down to the federal grant area, these federal grant areas are different than this year because they are offset with the revenue above. So all the programs down below here are offset with the revenue that they generate in that category in the revenue area. So we have total expenditures in the gen ed budget going from 7,880,000 to 8,548,000. So we have about a 9% increase in expenditures for next year. Our deficit that we're planning for this fiscal year in gen ed is 87,481, and for next year gen ed is 102,619. But this is just gen ed. We also have the food service and other programs. Here we have food service going from revenue of 310,500 to 281,600 for next year. We do anticipate a slight reduction in that activity in food service revenue because we are going from is called a seamless summer program, which is an all free program, to a regular food and nutrition program where a lot of the parents pay for the meals. And so we are anticipating a slight reduction in that participation. And we'll have to see as we go, we'll track that. And then the expenditures going from 296,402 to 288,721, also a reduction in that food cost because of the reduction in participation. So we'll be able to revise that as we see that change next fall when school starts, and we can align that with actual participation. So looking at a fund balance savings this year of 14,098 in food service, and then next year having a slight reduction in fund balance of 7,121, which is pretty typical for most food service programs to have just a slight loss in the overall revenue. Now going into the community service fund, this is for the Kinder Club and the summer camp programs. We are projecting that the revenue this year will be at 327,887, and then going up to 344,281 next year. And then the expenditures going from 278,000 this year to 252,78 next year. The savings in this year's budget for the community service fund will be just shy of 50,000. Next year, we're anticipating an increase in that program of 92,204 for a fund balance, ending fund balance this year in the community service fund. We're carrying forward the 93,823. We would end the fiscal year with 143,614 fund balance. And next year, we would end the fiscal year with a $235,000 fund balance. The next number is the overall all funds fund, general fund, food service, and community service fund. When you combine all funds, we would have total revenues of 8,431,852, expenditures of 8,455,444 for a operating deficit of 23,592. Adding to our beginning fund balance of 2,774,000, we would end the fiscal year with a 2,750,705 fund balance, 32.5% of expenditures, and 103% debt service coverage ratio. Next year, we're projecting a total revenues of 9,071,302, expenditures of 9,088,838, for a deficit net expenditures exceeding revenue of 17,536. Then adding to that beginning fund balance of 7,750,000 or 2,750,000. We would end the fiscal year next year with 2,733,170. That ends up to be about a 30.1% fund balance expenditures and 102% of the debt service coverage ratio. Now you can see that as we go into the future with our enrollment projections, and we are looking at making sure that we're staying within those covenants going out into the future. And we do have a slight growth projected in the future also. Any questions about the budget? The budgets. It's a lot of numbers, but most of the fiscal 21-22 budget has been part of the working budget all fiscal year. So no real surprises there, and very consistent for next year as far as moving forward with most of those budget line items.
Director Hyde, in previous years, I recall we had a policy where we would not approve a deficit budget.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, but I was looking for.
But I know that we've
line.
revised that policy,
Yeah,
making it an option if it's necessary. And I'm wondering, is it absolutely necessary that we need a deficit budget?
I was looking to see if there was a line that we thought we were going to change, but didn't get updated. Did you hear us, Brenda?
Yeah, which line were you talking about?
Just any line, because I thought, because the last meeting, we had the -17 as the operating surplus, but we talked about how that needed to be 0, and I thought we found the line that we were going to change. So I'm looking through to see if it was changed or not. Do you recall?
No. I do not recall that, that you wanted it to be 0. I know that we had increased some line item budgets to align with a higher inflation cost to reflect a higher increase in expense from this year till next year due to the increase in inflation. And that could be maybe what part of it. Oh, and the other thing too was we did increase donations by 10,000. You were looking at?
Yeah, and that looks to be done.
Yeah,
And that's because it was set at 100 and we moved it to 110,
yeah,
Which was the goal this year that we, yeah.
yeah. And then we
not to
actually,
worry, Kirsten, but we're upping to 120. We're not.
we ended up increasing a few line items to reflect a higher increase due to the increase in inflation. But you know, because you do have a healthy fund balance, having a deficit fund balance by this amount of money is not, we're meeting all your other debt service requirements. Otherwise, your fund balance will continue to grow. And in this manner, you can spend that down so that it doesn't continue to increase. It's when what I find is that many of the schools with the building companies, because of the requirement to have these debt service coverage ratios, the fund balances tend to grow excessively, and because of those requirements. And the only way that you can kind of keep spending that down to spend more money on your programs is to deficit spend slightly while maintaining those covenances.
Although we have the longer term plan to use that money for capital spends, and I understand that's another way we can use that money is to purchase capital assets, and we have a long list of capital wish lists happening, so.
Yeah, when we did revise that policy, we said that we wanted to keep the fund balance between 25 and 30%. And even with the 17,536 deficit spend next year, we're at above 30% still.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're well within the guidelines.
Was this the budget we reviewed at the last meeting?
No, it's slightly revised. That number was 33.
Well, that's the number for this year's budget.
Oh,
but
yep.
This is next year's budget. Was that what was the number?
That's
Do you recall, Lubert?
This is the one we reviewed for that one then. For the upcoming year?
Yeah.
That column's the same, yeah.
We had a discussion in the finance committee about inflationary risks in that budget. I mean, most of the expenses are fairly, let's say, fixed, but some are somewhat exposed to inflationary influences from the outside. And I thought that the 2% cost increase, general cost increase for some lines would probably not necessarily be sufficient. So, but what we said is basically what we would like to do, what I'm throwing out, we'd like to challenge to see if the school can go through each line here and see if the expenses cannot be reduced to compensate for potential effects of the inflation. For example, insurance expenses. I talked to Ashley, and I got her in contact with an insurance agent who's specialized in school insurances, going through the program, see what the package looks like, and see if any potential savings can be made there. But however, that does not come into effect until year end because all the contracts run through 12/31. But for next year, or like for the next calendar year. But what I think is we should probably go, or this goal should probably go through each line and see what other savings can be achieved there in order to compensate for potential inflation risks.
Yes, thank you, Director Kurtzinga.
So
I recall they changed some of those numbers at the meeting,
They changed some of
based
the
on that
numbers at the
discussion,
meeting,
right?
yes.
So that's reflected now.
Yep. Yep. And we went
Director
through
Mueller?
every-
yeah, I was listening to Brenda. I was thinking about risk and opportunities in the budget. And I mean, one risk that came to my mind was inflation, which you just addressed. Another risk we always have is enrollment. How are these numbers? These 620, is that kind of like a very conservative number or a more challenging number? Or, I mean, how is that?
It's 11 below projected, which is well in line with historically the number we build the budget off of.
Yep.
So the projected enrollment next year was 231, or was it 230? 230,
630.
yes, 630. Was 630.
So
It's not currently there.
we're at 628 at the moment.
No, we're lower than that.
Okay. So this board packet is out of date. What are we at?
623. But we're, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, we're toying with the idea of upping enrollments in kindergarten and first grade. You did not hear that from me because we haven't determined that yet. We have kindergarten EAs next year for the first time. So that could help with attrition down the road. So we're thinking about what we can do.
So that would put us at back to 629
626.
for if it's kindergarten and first.
Dude, I didn't say first, but we're thinking about first, but I didn't say that. Mind meld, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're thinking about first, right? So that would put us at 629.
We could also, I know enrollment's kind of a moving target and, it
Yeah.
changes a lot. If we were to adopt this budget, we could work with administration and revise it in July and August too, and making sure that it's aligned with current data. It could be a lot different in July, middle of July or end of July. But we could definitely, it's not uncommon to, I've had many schools revise budgets in July and August if there's a lot of change.
We're also considering over enrolling. So we would be at 632 if we over enroll in all the places we're thinking about, which is related to sibling. We have a number of families where we have kids on the waiting list who would get in one grade, but their sibling wouldn't. So we're considering over enrolling so that siblings can get in. It's very Tetris-like at this time of year, trying to figure all of this out, but we would be at, Nicole Chriselle did a really good job going through all of the individual scenarios. And we would be at 632 if we enroll all of those siblings and the families accept, which would put us at a good place with our 620 number.
All right, any other questions on the budget?
I mean, when I think like thinking about opportunities, I remember, I think it was last year, but the year before, we did a brainstorm activity of like thinking out of the box things. I mean, maybe we can take another look at some of these things, or because the school changed maybe in the meantime, or I don't know.
Mhm.
When you say thinking outside the box, are you thinking of revenue? Or is this kind of the flip side of the coin of what Lubert was talking about, going through and taking a hard look at expenses?
No, I
Or
was
are you
thinking more
about
like
increasing revenue?
opportunities where we can maybe yeah, generate revenue. I mean, I don't know. Of course, I mean, both things are, I think, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's more
Yeah, I mean,
what you're saying.
do you remember we had the
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a general thing with organizations which are growing. They kind of tend to get out of touch with the expenses. You know, you think that organization is growing and expenses, you don't look at it too much because you look at the top line. So at that point, you really need to look at the expense line and comb through the expenses.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that will be on the agenda for our meetings as a finance committee next year. But we can't really go through every line item tonight. I mean, we can if you all want to stay here. It would be fun if you all joined us for it
Can we
next
do
year as
that
well.
after the
I'm
new
happy
members
if you
join?
do that in the committee.
Oh, you want to do it after we switch? Yeah.
There's always opportunity. There's always opportunity to revise your expenditure line items. You know, this is a projection, and so you don't have to have every line item figured out today, but we could definitely put it on our, like you said, Richard, our finance committee, and hone in on some of these line items and really look at what we're spending. Because I know some of my schools this year that were down by like 30 and 50 students really had to go through each line and deduct, figure out where they could save and where they really needed to spend. And so I know it can be done. So if we don't meet those enrollment targets, it can be done. We can, it's amazing how you can find savings in many areas. So we can definitely work on that this year, even this summer, kind of pick apart, you know, different line items and spend extra time working on that.
I think before the next finance committee meeting, I think it would be prudent to have a draft projection of what it would look like if we had to go down to 610.
Okay.
Knowing what we see historically throughout the summer. I mean, it's not even the end of June yet.
Right.
A lot of our attrition comes in July and August. So I think having a contingency draft going down to 610 would be prudent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have left some of the programs in the budget for next year that we have cut from or removed in the past to make up some of that. So we have some of that room where we've found the money historically.
Yep.
So I guess the attitude is got to be whether we want to pass a budget with a small deficit spend that's within our guidelines, with a student population projection that is still less than what we are projecting without over enrolling anywhere or finding students anywhere, or going through and changing some of those to make, like, takes away some of those things right now. I think either way, the goal next year is going to be the same, to find savings and find revenue to keep those programs, which we all want, and, you know, have enrollment be as high as possible. I personally think or know that the school administration is going to do everything in their power to do that, and I'm comfortable with it the way it is. But like Brenda said, you know, there's only two ways to spend down our growing fund balance, and deficit spending is one way to spend it, and I think we can do that.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So I'll make a motion to pass the last year working budget as the final budget and the 2023 preliminary budget as our budget for next year.
Second.
Didn't we say we could approve that? We don't have to approve that
No, we do.
in the future? Okay.
We do have to approve it, but we can revise.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the working budget from the school year 21-22 and the projected budget proposed for school year 22-23. That was seconded by Director Dayton. Discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving these two budgets, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brenda. Have a nice summer and we'll see you in August.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Brenda.
guys.
Bye.
Have a wonderful holiday. Bye.
You too. All right. Next, sorry.
We'll talk later.
Next on the agenda is the administrative liaison update. Director Linnell.
Yes, I will be brief. Yesterday, we had the board's performance review, annual performance review for Director Christensen, overwhelmingly positive. And the way the review is structured is it's two-part. It's an assessment that Dr. Christensen does for herself and against her goals and the strategic plan. And then the board's assessment against those as well, where she exceeded expectations, met expectations, and did not meet expectations. And we match those up together and have a conversation about it. So that was delivered on behalf of the board yesterday. So we're done with that process, right? And as I mentioned, the part of the content of that is board expectations for the coming year. So we had that preliminary conversation about things that we expect will be board priorities for next year. Some of them being digging into the budget, thinking about where money can be moved around to better be allocated toward our priorities. Thinking about her professional development, where can new board members, as they're coming in with their talents, where are they going to step in and work with you and work with your team? And I've asked that she take the document that I presented to her, break out the constituent components that really live with her administrative team or staff, and share those with her, with them, so that they have an understanding of what the board is going to be expecting in the school year going forward. So very much a document to live in your file, but also a living document about starting the conversation with the board for next year and hitting the ground running.
All right, thank you, Director Linnell. All right, I think that completes all of our previous business. We have a resolution to fill the board vacancy. So we have a board seat that is being vacated by Director Roljusvig, and we thank her for her contributions on the board this past year. It's been a pleasure having you, and we wish you luck on your future endeavors. So we asked for applications to join the board, and we received 3 outstanding applications. And we have the governance committee reviewed them, discussed the board's needs, and we now have a resolution proposed by the governance committee.
Okay, I can read that resolution now. TCGIS resolution to fill current vacancy, resolution number 2022-0630-1, June 22nd, 2022. Whereas TCGIS Director Yasmin Root Yoswig, I'm never going to get it right, I apologize, resigned from the TCGIS Board of Directors effective June 30th, 2022 today. Whereas the TCGIS bylaws state that vacancies on the Board of Directors may be filled by appointment of a new director by the affirmative vote of a majority of the remaining directors, whereas the bylaws state a director filling a vacancy shall hold office until the term of the predecessor expires. Whereas the bylaws state that the remaining directors shall give consideration to appointing a new director based on the most recent board election and subject to the membership category being filled. Whereas the TCGIS board meets its requirements in Minnesota statutes to have at least one TCGIS teacher and at least one community member with 2 members in each category. Whereas the board conducted an assessment and determined that Lori Hartman would bring unique perspectives and skills that would be beneficial to the work of the board. Whereas Lori Hartman expressed commitment to serve on the board for the 2 years remaining in the 3-year term. Be it resolved that Lori Hartman is appointed to the position of TCGIS Director with the term expiring in June of 2024.
Thank you for that resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Dayton. All those in favor of approving the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Welcome to the board. All right, so we've reached the time for the board transition. I hope you don't run out the door too fast.
I was promised cupcakes.
You need music.
Well, we would like to invite Molly McGraw-Healy, the Director of Charter School Authorizing at the University of St. Thomas, to say a few words, and then she will conduct the oath of office for the 2 new members that we have here today, and 1 virtually. Wandy will have you participate virtually as well. So I'll hand it over to you. Thank you for coming, Molly.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And as I was driving here tonight, I was thinking about, we've been working with TCGIS since 2017. And it has been such a joy for both myself and my team members that get to come here and be with you all. I think this school is exceptional in so many ways. And I tend to be verbose, so I take it back, but academically, incredible school, incredible programming. Your commitment to kids is really amazing and a wonderful thing to see. I think the first time I came in 2017 and walked the halls, I just remember thinking, I hope they choose us because there's a dance, right? When the school is looking for a new authorizer, and it smelled like crayons and joy in here. And it was just wonderful to see the kids at work, to see the teachers, and the interactions, and just this really joyful rapport that has been here every single time I've had the opportunity to visit since. And you all as board members, I think, are such an important part of that. I think it is very easy, particularly when a school is strong and has many areas of strength, for the board to sort of sit back and say, yeah, things are going well, rubber stamp the financials and rubber stamp the self-evaluation, give ourselves a pat on the back. And this board, I would put up against any board nationally, truly. I think you all are tough. You're thoughtful, you're committed to the kids, and you're not afraid to ask hard questions. And those are the things that really mark a great board. And I think the final thing I'll say, and then I promise I'll get to the oath of office and we'll get everybody on, is that there's this delicate dance for a board member of taking truly on the personal responsibility for all of those agenda items, right? That if you're serving on a committee, you're there, you're doing the work, you're showing up, you're coming prepared. You're taking it really seriously, but also coming into the board meeting and understanding that it's not about you personally, it's not about your child or your neighbor who's going to be upset about something. It's about the good of the school as a whole. And that is a very delicate thing to have both the individual and the collective, and this board has it. So thank you for that. I know that is something that has to be constantly maintained. And so I'm super excited and really honored to be asked to deliver the oath and welcome some new folks into that tradition. I'm going to ask the new folks to stand.
I don't have to re-swear, do I?
I ask you to raise your right hand.
Hold on a second. Could we
Oh,
get
yes.
Wandy? Could you pin Wandy so that we can see him?
Thank you.
Yes, and let me know if we should move somewhere else. I wasn't sure where.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you guys come in front of the camera too? The camera is here. Yes, this is happening.
Do I need to reswear? I don't think so.
Why?
Do I need to?
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll try not to go too fast.
Wandy, you can unmute yourself too. There you go. Carry on.
All right, so if you would, please repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear
or affirm that I will support
that I will support
the constitutions of the United States and the state of Minnesota,
the constitutions of the United States and the state of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of the Board of Directors
of the Board of Directors
of Twin Cities German Immersion School.
of Twin Cities German Immersion School.
I understand that having taken the foregoing oath,
I understand that having taken the foregoing oath,
I hereby signify my acceptance
I hereby signify my acceptance
of the office and its legal and moral obligations.
of the office and its legal and moral obligations.
And as your authorizer and a friend of the school, I thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much, Molly. That was really wonderful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on TCGIS. And we thought it would be symbolic for you to come and do this for us, since we just completed the process of renewing our 5-year authorizing contract with you. So thank you for, thank you for working so hard on that with us throughout this past year. And we're excited.
Absolutely, we are too.
And before Director Linnell heads out, I think she has a few words to share. She did send an email to our new board members, and I asked if she could just share some of those words of wisdom with the public here, if you don't mind.
Yes, and I'll be super brief because, as everybody knows, I don't want to stand between you and cupcakes or the end of your meeting. So I will be brief. The part that I did want to share publicly is about the importance of service. We've talked about volunteerism. We've talked about the importance of this board. So I concluded my letter to the new members saying, I encourage you to tell others about your board service. Help others see the value of service and the importance of importance of local action and elections, of choosing carefully the stewards of our schools and other public offices. Behind those using public service to generate heat and flashy headlines are the people who prefer to generate light. Be those people and show others the way to do the same. I know that you all are going to do that. We have seen in your application and your care for the school already that you are going to be wonderful additions to this board. So I welcome you. I wish I could be working more closely with you, but I am happy for my colleagues on the board that you were going to be joining them. So thank you.
Well, you're certainly seeing standard, Lisa.
And with that, we'll call a brief recess to 7:45, and we'll recess until 8:05. Look at that, we're perfectly on schedule. It is 8:05 and I'm calling this meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School Board back to order. All right, we just had our board transition and we welcome Lori Hartman and Kirsten Reich and Juan D. Tesfaces, who is joining on Zoom. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
So we are now a new board with new composition, and our first item on the agenda is to elect board officers and board liaisons for the upcoming school year. So I would entertain a motion.
I move that the officers for the school year 22-23 will be Julie Altitude as chair, Emily Albers as vice chair, Richard Hyde as treasurer, Megan Dayton as secretary, and that the board liaisons will be Megan Dayton as administrative liaison, Richard Hyde as staff liaison, and Wandy Tesfaces as parent liaison. Sorry, Wandy.
Fantastic. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Reich, and it was seconded by Director Kritzinga. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is the board chair appoints the committee chairs for this next school year. And let's see. I might be able to do it by memory because I don't find it. I can't see it at the moment, but well, thank you. You're a lifesaver. All right, as fundraising chair, I appoint Kirsten Reich. As communication and outreach chair, I appoint Zilka Mueller. As diversity and belonging chair, I appoint Kevin Eberhard. As governance and leadership development chair, I appoint Emily Albers. And as finance and facilities chair, I appoint Richard Hyde. Thank you all for your service in leading these committees.
Do you not have to say yourself because it's in the bylaws?
So that brings us to our director's report. Director Christensen.
Thanks. I'm going to turn the time over to Dean Esther Noy and Ginger Sanford, who are going to do a world's best workforce and QComp or quality compensation progress report for the 2021-22 school year.
All right, hello.
Hello.
I'll just go ahead and jump in. So what is World's Best Workforce? It was developed in 2013 to ensure that school districts and charter schools in Minnesota enhance students' achievement. So there are 5 goal areas, 4 of them apply to TCGIS. All children are ready for school. All 3rd graders can read at grade level. All racial and economic achievement gaps between students are closed. And all students are ready for career and college.
And QComp is a state-funded program that is for the teachers. So it provides job and professional development so that we can increase student learning. So it has 5 different components that the teachers participate in. The school-wide site-based goal, professional learning communities that we're going to focus on tonight, the teacher practice opportunities, cognitive coaching, and then different career ladder positions. And then, like I said, we're going to focus on the PLCs, the professional learning communities. So all of our teachers are in a professional learning community with teachers that teach similar things to them. In the elementary school, it's mostly based on the grade level that the teacher teaches. In the middle school is mostly based on the subject area that the teacher looks in. And then within the PLCs, they develop goals that they want to meet for that year. And then they develop an action plan towards that goal and work on that throughout the year to increase student performance.
Okay, so we set these World's Best Workforce goals in the fall. And we're going to take a look at what we've been doing in order to meet them. So all children are ready for school. I'll just give you a minute to read them instead of reading them aloud. Okay. And we will move on to our progress by goal area and relevant QComp PLC goals. So our first goal area, kindergartners are ready for school. As far as this goal area, we have in 2021, we screened 99% of our kindergartners, and we have preliminary plans to do the same on schedule for 2022. We developed a new kindergarten readiness skills questionnaire as part of our registration packet. And as of today, 98% of our new kindergarten incoming kindergartners have filled this out, or their parents have filled it out for them. And then we have 50% of early childhood screening submitted as of today for 22-23. It's worth noting that St. Paul Public Schools has a huge backlog. They're completely booked out for the summer, so they have been a little bit slower to trickle in.
One of the other world's best workforce goals is increasing the third grade reading proficiency. So the goal, the percentage of third grade proficient in reading NCAs will increase 7.5% from 2021 to 2022 at 60%. Some of the strategies we use to meet that goal is the LETTER strategies. LETTER stands for, see if I can remember it, Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. It's a program that a few of us were trained in over the last 2 years through MDE, and MDE is pushing for a lot of schools to be trained, if not all schools to be trained in the next few years for this. Focuses on phonics, spelling, fluency and decoding, and reading comprehension practice. So we've implemented a lot of new strategies into our program here. Also PLC work as far as setting goals and progress monitoring throughout the year to make sure we're reaching those goals. And then we also have our access support, which is not only a pull-out service for students that are struggling, but also a push-in service that they can help students within the classroom to work on their reading and spelling. And so the access is also this year started piloting the Barton system. Barton system is a reading tutoring system to help students that are not necessarily showing signs of dyslexia, but it is developed for students with dyslexia. And so we piloted that program this year and had some really great success. So looking forward to continuing that. And then as far as the PLCs that are working towards some goals that help with their grade reading fluency, we have the second grade team for the past several years have been working towards the goal of, for example, 70% of second grade students are able to read 70% or better of 60 high frequency words in German and 30 mathematical terms. We put a little note there that students perform better despite the COVID impact. Since this team has been working on this goal over multiple years, they're able to look at the data over multiple years and see that although COVID was a crazy year, we had the distance learning, we had hybrid learning and everything, they were happy to report that the data shows that the students are doing better than they were a few years ago. So even though we had craziness, the kids are doing great as far as their reading in second grade. And that also even though it's the German reading being assessed in that area, and then in third grade, it's English reading that's being assessed. The more foundation they get built in kindergarten, first and second, no matter what language it is, that helps support the language as they move up. Also the first grade goals, 80% of first graders increase their scores to 80% or better, as measured on the German letter sound correspondence screener. And 80% of first graders will be able to name 80% of the words on the sound table assessment. So I'm happy to report that all those goals were met this year.
Okay. So this next goal area, we're just taking apart the math, and we're gonna talk a bit about what we did for math this year, because we worked really hard on math this year. So, in the area of math curriculum, this year we piloted a new math curriculum for 5th and 6th grades, as well as redoing the structure of our 5th grade to have a bridge where they have the same teacher for 2 periods. We did a math curriculum review across the board for all grades. And we have new curriculum purchased to be implemented this coming year. In addition to all of this, we also have in-house developed computational practice packets to supplement the curriculum. We had 2 tier 2 push-ins in 5th, 8th math, basically similar to what Ginger was referring to. We just thought of all of our students during the pandemic and how can we best support the most students possible. And so we had some of our tier 2 providers in tier 1 classrooms to support any foundational skills that were needed. And we have developed math practice over the summer. There's challenge packets. There's extended school year for students in special education. And our ESSER 3 funds are supporting summer school services for gen ed students who qualify.
Just a quick question, the computational practice packages to supplement, are these like things they do at home or in school?
They do them in school. Yeah.
So for Q Comp every year, we have to have a school-wide site-based goal that all the teachers are working towards meeting. And this year, it was a math focus. And so our goal was that the students in all grades 1 through 8 at our school are, it's kind of a weird terminology, the college pathway and low risk. That is a designation that the FAST screeners set. It's not labels that we put on it. That's just what the labels of FAST assessments are. So all the students in 1st through 8th grade who are in the college pathway or low risk categories on the FAST A-Math standardized assessment will increase from 86.5 in the fall to 88 in the spring. We didn't quite meet that goal this year, but the good news is that our students started off this fall better than they did the year previously. So we were already higher than we were the year before when we started. And so that was great to start off at. And then at the end of the year, this year, we were at about 81%, which is about the same as last year. So we didn't lose any ground. So that's really nice to see. These are all the goals that different PLC teams had to support math proficiency. So special ed, they increased their math fluency scores in addition or multiplication by at least 8 points. 3rd grade, 75% of 3rd grade students were able to score 8% or higher on a classroom assessment. That was actually on place value. It doesn't specifically say that, but it's a place value classroom assessment. 4th grade, 60% of 4th grade students complete 25 division problems with 70% accuracy rate in 5 minutes. 5th grade, 75% of students increase their ability to demonstrate fluency with multiplication division facts using strategies and algorithms. And 5th grade, again, students achieved a class average of 85% or better on math-related science word problem tests by correctly using strategies to solve problems. Again, happy to report that all of those goals were met this year.
And can I ask a question? I mean, these look like a lot of assessments and screenings. Is this something that adds to the teacher that students and teachers don't even really know or put more time on because these are assessments that teachers just get in and do anyways also? Or are they pulled out, or is there special learning for special assessment like the MTAs, or can you say maybe a little bit into that?
Yeah, most of the QComp PLC goals are things that the teacher is working with the students on anyways. We're just making it more of a focus for this particular year to make sure that the kids are increasing their learning instead of staying stagnant or even declining. So most of these are classroom assessments. So it's just like a test that the students take. They might take a pre-test in the fall, just so we can get a baseline for the data. And then at the end of the year, they take the post-test, which is very similar to the pre-test, to give us our ending data. So it doesn't necessarily take a lot of time away from the classroom. It just gives us the data we need to make sure that our students are learning what we're wanting them to learn.
Perhaps the exception to that would be when they're referring to German letter sounds. Some of the literacy goals are tied to those, and those we do have our ACCESS team come in and do screeners with the students that last about a minute per kid. To work with them one-on-one to see, for example, if they can produce letter sounds the way that we would expect. Okay, so our last goal area, all students are ready for career and college. We did, with our curriculum review, we purchased new curriculum, which we'll be implementing next year. We expanded our language arts libraries for sustained silent reading. And we've slated science curriculum review for next year. So we'll begin science. There's a new next gen Minnesota state standards coming up, and they're quite different than the previous science standards. So we might take a little bit longer to do that review, since it's very comprehensive and different than what we're used to. So that was the progress we made on those.
Yeah, and then the PLC goals that went along with the World's Best Workforce College Readiness are the 8th grade goals that you see here. So 7th and 8th grade students who meet or exceed benchmark scores on the reading comprehension assessments in German increased by at least 5%. Increased number of 8th graders who achieve 80% or higher on a figurative language and meaning of words and phrases assessment. And students applied strategies to add, subtract, factor, and solve linear equations with rational coefficients with a class average at 85% accuracy. So those are the goals that were met that pertain to the 8th graders.
Okay, that's our update.
Thank you so much.
I have a couple of questions. A lot of the thresholds there are like 70 or 80%, and this is just for my own interest, but what are we doing to support the kids that maybe don't reach that threshold?
That's a good question.
I can go ahead. So we have screeners that we do, universal screeners 3 times a year. And when we have students who are not making expected progress, then we offer tier 2 services. So whenever you hear ADSIS or ADSIS services, that's our tier 2 programming. The way that works is once we have a student who we see isn't performing the way we would think, we have data meetings where we talk about just the data that we think we've collected on that student's performance. And then if that student is seeming to have a concern in an academic area, we pick them up on our ADSIS caseload. So then, parents would get a letter in the mail opting into services, and then they would work with one of our interventionists.
That answered both my questions.
And if it's more of a classroom setting that we find they didn't do great on a certain assessment or something, then the teacher will go back and reteach, work with the student one-on-one or in a small group with students that didn't quite need it and try to get them where they need to be.
Cool.
Dr. Hyde.
I have 2 questions. These are last year's goals that we're looking at, correct? Who sets the goals? And
You mean the World's Best Workforce goals or the PLC goals?
the World's Best Workforce goals.
So we set them as a group in the Curriculum Advisory Committee, and then we also have a public meeting where folks are invited to provide input and feedback.
Okay,
So they're jointly set by staff
Yeah.
and families, parents.
Awesome.
And teachers.
and then the other one's just more of a curiosity. I saw the words pull out, and that was kind of like self-explanatory, but then I saw push in, and I was like, I gotta ask.
Yeah, so our push-in model is where, so the main classroom teacher will be teaching, a certain topic area. And if there's students that are struggling either with that topic or with a foundational skill, then the push-in teacher will maybe pull those kids to a table in the back of the room and work on a specific foundational skill. Or if the students let's say it's writing, they're writing a story or something, then the push-in teacher can be an extra adult in the room to go walk around and help the students individually with what they're working on. So it just provides either a small group setting or individual setting, or just another adult in the room to help with
But
things.
in the classroom, that's the
Yep,
difference.
yeah, understood. Thank you for that.
Thanks for asking those questions, because they were the questions I had a lot. We throw around the terms tier 2, tier 1, which just means in the classroom with no intervention other than what the teacher is doing. Tier 2 is our access program, push in. We use a lot of other terms that have a very unique educational meaning.
I have a question. Could you describe the process that you go through to pick the new math curriculum for, you bought new curriculum for 1 through 4, I think,
Actually, 1 through 4 and 7th and 8th.
and
then
7 and 8.
Last year we did 5 and 6.
So how do you evaluate, how many different curricula options did you look at, and how did you
I
evaluate
would
them?
also speak a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
Oh, okay. We can save it for you then.
Do you want to?
If you want to speak about it, I will just leave it out.
I will just briefly say there's a rubric and there were meetings throughout the year. And so the various curricula that they looked at, they measured against a rubric. And here I actually linked to this particular, the rubric that was for 7th and 8th grade reveal math for this one. Just to give you an idea. Oops. Not what I meant, but it's okay. That's the presentation I gave on that. But here you can see,
You might want to read what the categories are. a little bit.
so there's categories of content specific needs. So are they aligned to Minnesota standards? Are students able to make sense of it? So, you know, to not go into a ton of detail, there's these indicators that have been set, and then each curriculum is measured against the criteria. So
All right, thank you.
I don't want to steal Yasmin's thunder though.
Right.
And is it, is this the math teachers who do that, or I mean, who's doing that?
Who review the curriculum? Yeah, yes. Exactly.
And in the elementary school, that's the classroom teacher.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much for your presentation.
I'll turn the time now over to Yasmin Wolfusvik, who is going to give us a review of curriculum work that's been done throughout the year.
So this is my presentation, hope it works. Yep. So one of my various roles at TCGIS this year was being a curriculum coordinator with Ginger. I'm going to speak about strategic goals that our assignments were aligned to. I'm also going to give then some highlights of my work this year. I mostly worked on the German immersion curriculum, the math curriculum for elementary school. I worked on some enrichment opportunities for our students, organized the curriculum, and offered some PD sessions. So here are some of the strategic goals. Our assignments were aligned to the following strategic goals. We were looking at innovative teaching and learning, and you can read the goals and you're all familiar with them. But yeah, these are the ones that our assignments were aligned to. So German immersion norms, alignment of curriculum scope and sequence, then standards-based grading. I wasn't much involved in this, but Ginger was. Then enrichment opportunities, and Abzeichen is, for instance, one of the extracurricular enrichment that we have. And then diversity and belonging. As you know, in my board work, I was also chairing the diversity and belonging committee, and I was working a little bit on the curriculum that recognizes the US Heritage Months, but also as a curriculum coordinator, I was focusing on this task. And together with the librarian, I was also looking at books for the TCGIS library. And as an 8th grade teacher, I focused mostly on books for our 7th and 8th grade students, and had those books upstairs in a separate library. So the German immersion curriculum, when we met as a team, as a curriculum team in the beginning of the school year, we often spoke about curriculum and what that term means for us at the school, and also for international teachers coming from maybe German schools that use the term in a different way. So we kind of figured that out in the beginning of the school year and then looked at what we needed to do and work on this year. So my work was mainly focusing on the elementary school German immersion curriculum, looking at the ZFR standards for DATS, Deutsch als Fremdsprache, Deutsch als Zweitsprache, German as a foreign and second language. We need to focus on these standards that are given from the ZFR because we are a ZFR school. Zentrale Stelle für Auslandsschulwesen is the nice whole term.
Do you want to describe what that is in English?
The Central Agency for Schools Abroad from Germany. So we do our assessments, the A1, A2, B1 assessments that focus on language skills in 3rd, 6th, and 8th grade. So after 3rd grade, we are doing the A1 exam by the ZFR, end of 6th grade, A2, and then B1 at the end of 8th grade, which is the DSD1, the big test that we all heard about several times in meetings also this year. Yeah, so we looked at those standards and we looked at the Minnesota standards because TCGIS is not only a Minnesota public school that has to cover all the Minnesota standards, but also we want to focus on immersion. So we have to also look at what we need to do in order for our kids and our students to acquire the language skills that we hope for them to learn and have by the end of 8th grade. So we do everything we need to do plus more. And I looked at how we can do both and how we can align both and put all of this onto paper because the school has been founded in 2005. We have been doing this for years, but we wanted to have a more clear structure and align these a little better. So this is what I was focusing on. I created a 3-year schedule with goals that we have to or should meet in order to get this whole concept onto paper. And this scope and sequence, it is a very in-depth scope and sequence, will contain information about what is taught, who is teaching it, and when is it taught. Moreover, which materials are used. I created a template that I will show you in a second and explain because it's all in German. And I met with grade level representatives to introduce them to the template, do the work, offered some PD around this so that they were able to start working on the grade level scope and sequences for German. And this is how the template looks for the German immersion curriculum. So on the left, in the left column, you will find time. How much time are we using for which topic? I don't know if I have a pointer here.
We see your mouse.
Okay, so here time, and then what kind of topics are we focusing on? And then we have the most important one, competencies. We don't want to give a clear, you have to teach this lesson, then this lesson, and this lesson, and that is what's going to be used for materials. We have media and materials down here, and we are giving a guideline for teachers. But ultimately, every teacher is different and every teacher has its own personality. So we think sticking to competencies and standards is what we wanted to focus on. If we have teaching units ready and available for all, that is awesome. But if a teacher decides to change maybe a lesson or two within that unit, but still sticks to those competencies, they can do so. So the competencies that are taught within one of those units are always divided up into listening and viewing competencies, reading, speaking, and writing. So in each grade level, we have to meet different standards for the students to achieve the goals or meet the goals by the end of third, sixth, and eighth grade. And then we have linguistic competencies, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and intonation. And we have competencies that are not language, bound to language acquisition, methodological competencies, for instance, being able to summarize a text in a few words, social competencies, being able to work with a partner to find agreements and so on, media competency, intercultural competency. So this is all what we're teaching throughout our units. We are always focusing on everything since all of this is important for the growth of our students. Leistungsüberprüfung is a nice word for assessment in German, and then all the DAF competencies can be listed down here, and the Minnesota standards that we are teaching within that unit can be listed down here. So this is the template. And we already started working on bringing everything together. As I said before, we do all of this already. We're just putting everything together and on paper. And I have a few examples I can show you. I worked on this. Oh, why is it not showing? I think I have to switch to. Sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen.
No problem.
This is actually what I wanted to share. So let's take it.
You're
Okay,
lucky
so
that
this
you're
one's
lucky
the-
we have the IT support right next to you.
So this one is the example that I provided for teachers. That is for Unterstützungsdeutsch 8th grade. It's all about the concept, important information around the subject. So everyone who wants to learn more about the class will have to read all of this. And then down here, you can find a complete overview of which units are taught, for how long, and what are we focusing on competency-wise. Since I taught this class, I also linked my lesson materials and lesson plans down here. And this is all in German, so I'm just skipping through this so that you can get an idea of what is going on and a glimpse here. And I also have to mention that this is work in progress. It is not finished. It will probably never be finished. Or at least there's always room for change. Yeah. So, yeah, if new standards come out, we have to change some of this.
But each teacher can kind of add the material they use.
Yeah,
Links out.
exactly. So if you click on lesson materials, you can find all the materials that I've been using for that unit and so on. Yeah. So that is that. I also had some teachers working on the elementary school Lehrpläne, scope and sequences, for instance, the 4th grade one is also linked in the slides. This is how it looks. Awesome work. So as you can see and imagine, this is a lot of work, but this is the amazing work that we're doing every day. And I think it's worth to put everything on paper and to keep it for a long time. All right, let me try to go back to my slides here. Of course, it is not working.
Can you give an idea of how much of that has like, so we saw 8th grade, basically your class. Has that been done for other grades and other classes?
Yeah, so the second example that I was showing is for the 4th grade one.
Okay.
And we have started working on the 2nd and 3rd grade one as well, but it needs more time.
Mhm.
And for middle school, we have our plans in a different template, so we just have to switch to the new template. Yeah. More questions about the German group?
Yeah, I remember at one time, and maybe it's on the website, I don't know right now, but there was like a summary, like for parents, like an overview or something. Yeah, is that still there, and is that part of this, or is this also get updated if this gets updated or whatever, or is better to say, is that the way you or the school is planning to inform parents about the curriculum?
So what you just saw is basically to use for teachers and staff. The parent curriculum maps are still on the website. You can still look into those, and they are listing mostly topics. So you can still have a look at 4th grade German and see all the topics that you just had a. Yeah.
But that reflects.
Yes. Yeah. Because we're still working in sort of standards. If they change, parent curriculum maps and some parts of the curriculum have to change.
And the second question, you talked about the ZFR. So ZFR is, we're doing the tests, I don't know the name, but isn't the ZFR also funding or supporting the school? Or
Yeah, I cannot speak about the funding, but
but that was my question. I mean, when we describe the ZFR, I know they are doing the tests or deliver or executing or taking, processing the tests, but didn't we also get some funding from?
What else do we get from them? Oh, yeah, we get a big check from them every year that supports curriculum purchases. And they provide a teacher for us every couple of years.
Yeah, so because when we describe what ZFI is, I think that is also important.
Yeah, so to be at ZFA Schule means those things, right? It means support from them. It means that our students have support to take that test, which then allows them to take the next test, the Day-Stets-2, if they wish, and if they're in a school that offers it. And if they pass that, then they could study for free at a German university. I don't know how many students we've had that have taken advantage of that, but we're just at this point now where we have students old enough to be doing that. But yeah, it means all of those things. So the amount of money we get from them is in the $25,000 range.
Close.
Annually for curriculum and support. Does that sound about right?
It's like 19, but yeah.
Yeah. Depends on euro exchange rate.
Yes, it really does.
That's including that doesn't include the teacher.
No.
Right.
No.
So that's just curriculum.
They don't pay for the teacher, they provide the teacher. So the teacher is paid in their home Bundesland in Germany, and then they get what they call it, Zuschuss here, sort of an additional stipend from us, which is lower salary than they would make, but the combined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kirsten, can I pipe in?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so part of that 18,000, it goes 1 to curriculum, but 2 to cover that staff, our portion of the stipend as well. So it goes to both of those.
It doesn't cover it, but yeah.
It doesn't cover all of it, but that's what it's.
Yeah, that would be a lot of books, right? Thanks, Ashley.
Welcome to the meeting, Ashley.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Any other questions about German? Right, so let's look at the math curriculum. So to answer the question that has been asked before, I met with 4 grade level representatives, 1 from each grade level, to speak about what our needs are in regards to math in elementary school. I also spoke with the, of course, middle school staff, because there's also the transition between 4th grade and 5th grade. And then we have math books from Germany that are mostly aligned to the German standards, of course, because they're printed over there for German students, that do not always meet the Minnesota standards. So we spoke about what needs to be, what we need to do in order to cover everything. And also what the math teachers in middle school have observed, that we need to maybe support our student or support our math teachers in middle school with to help our students be successful in math in both elementary and middle school. So together with this work group, I created a checklist with all the needs, and I will show this checklist to you in a second. That is our rubric. And then I looked into what's on the market and ordered some sample materials. We met and looked at the materials, and then I gave each of those grade level representatives their books. So it was 4 or 5 different textbooks that I ordered. And then for each grade level, the teachers would get them for a couple of weeks, look at the rubric, and score or rate the books based on what we thought our needs were. And then we decided to move on and purchase the mini max, which I'm going to show you after I have shown the checklist, for which I need to stop screen sharing. And this one is the checklist that's in English. So we looked at, of course, first and foremost, does the material include all the content we have to teach? Are the topics relevant? Is the material authentic? Is it relevant for our students and into our everyday life or their everyday life? The language level, especially in higher grades. Then how the structure of the materials is, if it is organized or not, or organized for ourselves. For teachers and students, then are the books not overloaded with colors, tasks, and pictures. We have looked at some that were really overwhelming to look at. Are there offerings for different learning needs and speeds? So differentiation. Also, if there's sufficient support for teachers, especially since we have to supplement some of what is not covered by the German materials. We also need to know, or would need to see, how much work teachers would need to put into supplementing. And then second page. So this was our rubric. We decided to, or we chose the Minimax by Ernst Klett. That is currently also the best material on the market in Germany. And there's a lot to say about this book and show, but it's all in German again. So I'm going to quickly show you how it looks like for a student and explain why we have chosen this one. So this is a page from the, I think, first grade book. And by just looking at it on the first side, you can see that the language is very simple. There's only a few words, especially in first grade. That's important because they've just started to read. And yeah, it's the foreign language, so we shouldn't overload it with text. There's language support. As you can see, we have weniger als fewer than, and then on the right corner, mehr als more than. So it's given up there. We also have some language support in the bottom. It's maybe hard to see, but I sent you the slides in advance, so you can also have a look at them again on your own screen. It's visually appealing. It's not overloaded with colors and texts and boxes, and it's quite clearly organized. It's very student oriented. It covers most of the Minnesota standards. The problems are authentic. We have relevant topics. It's well structured. It has differentiated materials. There's always pages with more problems. There's always support materials for students that need more support. And we have a great software for teachers as well that they can use to print additional materials and worksheets and tests and assessments and everything. So this is the decision that has been made. Questions about math?
Do you know how long ago we changed curriculum for math?
So it will be implemented next year.
And how long have we been using the current curriculum?
So we have been using Denken und Rechnen for quite some time. I don't exactly know how many years.
Mhm.
We also ordered the new version of Denken und Rechnen and looked at it with a rubric, but the minimums was better.
Exciting.
Elementary level books.
It's just, I just focus on first to fourth grade.
Okay. And 7th and then 8th grade is also getting new materials. Are those in English?
They're in English.
They are in
Different.
English, yeah.
Okay, different.
Math is taught in English in middle school.
Right.
Thanks. Yasmin, can you just briefly describe what the meetings, so all of this that you're describing happened in a curriculum committee? Can you talk about who was in it and how often you all met?
Yeah, so so we had a grade level representative from all the grade levels in elementary school, so not kindergarten, not first, fourth grade. We had Katrin Zinner for first grade, second grade, sorry, Kirsten Köhler for first grade. Third grade was Leonie Manes, and then fourth grade is Sophie Rowe. Sophie and Leonie have actually worked with this curriculum in Germany before, so they are experts in using it. We met as a team, I think 3 times, and the dean, the elementary school dean, was also with us during those meetings. Yeah, and I mean, they also had a couple of weeks to look at all the materials with their team levels. So with the other 2 teachers that are teaching in the same grade level, they also looked at the other materials. Since they are looping next year, they also looked at third grade teams, looked at fourth grade materials, fourth grade teams looked at third grade materials. Same for first and second.
And can you describe the relationship between that grade level work and the work of the weekly work between you and Ginger and the deans?
Yes, this was a process that took us like half a year, like deciding for the new math curriculum. We first met to determine our needs. And the deans, I reported to the deans, I told them what we were working on and what we came up with, and I showed them the rubric. And then once the materials arrived, I showed those during the academic or the curriculum team meetings. Then I met with the
Those are
teachers.
weekly. Those are weekly meetings.
Those are weekly, exactly. Then I met with the teachers again, and once I heard back from the teachers, I again reported to the deans.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to elucidate what a robust process it is, and how much, you know, communication there is among the teacher teams, and then supported by admin. And Yasmin's thoroughness, I think, has been on display tonight, and we appreciate all of that work, which will, as she said, be available in perpetuity, which is really important when we have a transition. So
those were the bigger things. moving on to enrichment opportunities. So I also implemented some of those. We have a junior only in 7th and 8th grade that is for middle school students, 7th and 8th grade. It's by the Goethe Institute. It's an enrichment opportunity that focuses on the MINT subjects, the STEM subjects. I also created this MINT website that some of you might have seen advertised in the Wunsch brief and on the website. It's for K through 8. Then I worked with the middle school dean on the Abzeichen program for middle school students. Created a checklist again. As you can see, I'm a huge fan of checklists. I will show you the checklist in a second. And then I also worked with Katrin Singer and Katharina Schierk on the intern program, which is part of the Immersion curriculum here at TCGIS. So just a few pictures for you to see. This is the MINT enrichment page. For those of you who have used it or have not used it, it's divided into different grade levels, and then students can, if they're in 3rd grade, click on here, and then find some resources for use at home, magazines, TV shows, apps, all free of charge, all focusing on the STEM subjects. This is the junior only website. I would love to show this to you, but it would take like an hour to walk through this. It has little videos about different topics. So there are units on robotics, for instance, or space, and it's all in German, little videos. And then you have always a pre-activity with vocabulary. Then you watch the video and then you have a worksheet or some activity afterwards, and students can earn badges. It's really cool.
Do they have to log in with their, so it's not an open or free?
Yeah, it is. It's free.
Yeah, but not
but
open to, I couldn't do it. I couldn't earn the badges.
You could. You could. You're over
That would be
18.
fun.
But you gotta go to Duolingo.
And you can also do this in various languages. The Goethe Institute has published this in German, English, Russian, Spanish, so on. So yeah. This is the Abzeichen checklist. You can have a closer look. I don't want to take too much time.
Describe what Abzeichen are.
Yeah, the Abzeichen is students can earn Abzeichen in middle school. It's badges for some extra work they're working on, and we wanted to make it equitable for all. So this is why we have a checklist. We didn't want this to be a thing only for gifted students. So this checklist kind of helps teachers to design their Abzeichen program for their subject. So they have to be able to answer all the questions, and if the criteria are met, they can have students work on the Abzeichen. And again, have a look at it in your time. And then curriculum organization. I think I spoke about this while showing you the German immersion curriculum and everything. I tried to put everything together as well as I could. I also gave or proposed a structure for the ES&MS shared drives to store all the digital materials we have. Organized the math curriculum that we chose. Teachers have it already. And then organized the German DAF and social studies curriculum, which is actually a lot of physical books that we have upstairs. And I think, oh yeah, and I offered PD, and those were the topics I offered something for new staff, and then staff teaching in German about vocabulary strategies, reading strategies, and then individually, I also focused with individual teachers on the curriculum writing process. That's all. Thank you for listening.
That's an incredible amount of work.
Yeah,
It really
It was
is.
fun.
I'm so glad you were able to focus on that this year.
Me too.
the irony is that just many things, right? It's not just one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We're continuing that position, I hope.
It's posted.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thanks, Yasmin, and thanks, Ginger and Esther, appreciate it. So Ashley and I are gonna try and get through a lot of material in about half the time that we need, but I think everyone will appreciate that. So we talk fast. And also all of this is available. Everything that we're covering tonight, you've seen. So we'll be quick. Julia, I can screen share.
Yeah, we all had a chance to go through the hundreds of slides that you shared ahead of time. So thank you for that.
Okay. So. Go ahead, Ashley. We're going to start here with start here with staff retention.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join virtually. My spouse is out of town and I had my first finance class tonight. So I'll be deep in finances for the next 7 weeks. So
also she has strep throat. So.
Well, we don't want you here anyways, then.
They don't want her here.
No.
I'm just saying she's up late at night doing her job.
It's been a rough June. Anyway, staff retention, it's fun to focus on HR, not just finances. So since I think the last report that Kirsten gave you, we had one additional teacher who's leaving us and 2 current EAs departing. So current total staff retention is 88.8. For teachers is 82.6. If we're counting from the beginning of the year, we lost 2 teachers mid-year. Total staff is 87.03 and teachers are 78.8. I do think it is interesting to point out that 5 of those 9 teachers are leaving the profession, do not plan to teach next year.
And that does echo things we're seeing elsewhere. 2 of our teachers, one of them is going into collision repair. The metaphors there are readily evident. And another one is going into trucking. Being in a quiet cab after teaching kindergarten probably feels pretty good.
Quite the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to focus on the hiring. It's been a busy June, and May and June hiring new positions.
Yep. So, I think you can see we tried to add some more detail to these at some of the board's requests. So we have been very busy. This is one of 3 slides. We feel pretty great about where we're at in our hiring, despite some of these folks being, kind of notifying the school a little bit later or weren't anticipated as of January. So you can kind of see each of these positions. It's exciting. If you want to go back to the first, I'd like to highlight one there. We have a former intern returning as a full-time teacher, fully licensed, completed their degree a couple of years ago and will be teaching a kindergarten class. So that's incredibly exciting. In addition to our middle school science teacher is also a former employee, worked as an EA and a teacher, completed her PhD recently and will be rejoining us. So that's an exciting place to kind of see kind of some folks coming back.
And we had a lovely little switcheroo that happened. We had hired initially Tobias Schupp for kindergarten. His sweet spot is 3rd grade though, but he wanted to be at the school and was excited enough to teach kindergarten. And then when Stephen Presume had not applied yet, and when he did, he was more interested in kindergarten, and so putting him there allowed us to move Tobias into the grade level that he feels most excited about. So that was really great.
I think also we should highlight that our on the former slide as well, we'll be introducing a middle school science as a special, not science, middle school music as a specialist that will be replacing our drama program. Dylan, it says tier 2, but he will be moving into tier 3. He just completed his education as well. And so he'll be joining us, and that will be exciting position. It could be concerning for some folks to see English speaking there. However, for the last 3 school years, we've had a English speaking art teacher. And so we will be moving to a German speaking art teacher going forward. And then our middle school music will be English with some emphasis on singing German songs. But the teacher,
I would say international music, including, yeah, German folk songs. He's really great.
Yeah, it's exciting. So we can kind of see here the elementary school behavior interventionist. This is a brand new position this year, grant funded. So we did a lot of work on kind of strategically looking at what the school needed for the year in staffing. And so that was a part of that. We know that we want to have more support for our K1, 2 and behavior, especially coming out of COVID. And so that that position will be supporting there, and is a current employee being moved up into a teaching role. So that's an exciting spot. We're very excited to say that we hired a director of special education. We had several impressive candidates, I think partially because we recruited off LinkedIn, and that individual will be starting July 11th. So that's extremely exciting. We have a
She goes by Dr. Rowe.
Nice.
Special education evaluation and due process coordinator will be starting. This is a former, somebody who's been part of our SPED program, but contracting for the last several years. So this individual will be internal going forward. So that's a very exciting.
It's a much bigger deal than we can really fully articulate here, that we have now an in-house director of special education. We have a dean of special education whom you have met previously. We have a due process and evaluation coordinator, a position we didn't have before. All of these are in-house, like literally their bodies will be in the building. The contract model we've used before is a completely typical model for a charter school. So it's not that we were doing something unusual, but it has always been our goal, and it's the strategic plan to have an in-house best model SPED team, and we couldn't be more excited. We had truly a truly great team.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this slide is another strategic spot that Kirsten and I, in partnership with the deans, really worked, or particularly the elementary school dean, really worked hard on this year, and incorporating this into our budget and being strategic in our movement there is incorporating 3 kindergarten EAs instead of a single language immersion specialist. Our kindergarten, I think, and you'll see this in, I don't know if we included it fully, but partially in the parent comments, and then certainly from our kindergarten teachers, just needing additional support in those classes. And so we were able to do that here quite a bit, which is super exciting. I want to point out, while I can't share the name because we're still kind of in final contract conversations, the 3rd kindergarten EA is also a former employee returning to TCGIS and is extremely excited to work here with us. And then we've hired our business and HR administrative assistant, Isabel Bullenveder, from Switzerland. She is also a former TCGIS employee. And so just, again, spoke so highly of, where the school is and what we've been doing, and really spoke fondly of her time here before. And so it's exciting, very excited to be returning to our staff. So we do still have 3 open positions. We have some interviews currently on the calendar for the middle school sport teachers, and we have 0 special education teacher applicants currently. So I am working on increasing our advertising of that. We'll be paying for those and seeing if we can get more folks in the door in that way.
Okay, I want to just give a little bit of a summary of an admin retreat. We actually had 3 days of administrative retreats in June, setting goals for the new year. Ashley, do you want to do this slide and I'll do the next one?
Oh, sure. Yep. So we talked a lot about kind of and, you know, part of this was in response to the org health review, just in response of the admin's reflection on the year. So we really wanted to look at kind of improving and setting up a new meeting structure for all staff, new teachers, and then international staff in particular, to have more touch points throughout the year, have those connecting, enable us to gather quicker, you know, more feedback from each of these groups, allow us to work on more strategic things within those monthly all staff meetings as well. So we're excited to be able to do that. At least to my knowledge, since I have worked here, we have not rolled those out right away at the beginning of the school year. So I'm excited to have a schedule that teachers will have in hand, ready to go for the year and kind of know what to expect following that up. So I'm excited that we've kind of improved that organizational structure for our staff. We also, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was one of the things that perplexed me a bit when I started here, that we didn't have regularly scheduled all staff meetings. We had a few this year, but they were essentially on an emergency basis. And so having regularly scheduled ones, I think will really, really help give an opportunity for us to just communicate more efficiently.
Yeah, and proactively. So we have plans kind of adding these into it, kind of being able to plan better as an administration what those meetings will be throughout the year as well, so that we can kind of look at those bigger topics together and gather larger feedback, meet our strategic goals, talk about our strategic goals. I mean, we know that staff don't always know what happens at board meetings, right? And so how do we make sure that those things are being shared, so staff are well aware of all of that information as well. And then we use this time to look in detail through each of all of those hundreds of slides that you saw. I don't think you got some of the breakdowns. We have them broken down by department as well. And so we were able to each look at our department and make department goals for ourselves for the year too. So we use that time to do that and kind of think through how we want to use the org health data to make our school better. We unfortunately, we did not roll this out at the end of the school year with teachers. So we do have plans to roll out this data next year, early in the year, in addition to using it to help structure our partnership with staff council. So we want them to have this data and help us think through goals that maybe they see that maybe we didn't, or focuses that maybe we did not see. So we'll be doing that in the fall as well.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that we also had a really, really wonderful meeting, panel of international teachers that we invited to come talk to us about their experiences. It's one thing that we know is, I won't call it a blind spot, but it's something that needs ongoing work. Yasmin said earlier, this is something that will never be finished. About the immersion work and some of the other curriculum work. That is absolutely true about our work trying to integrate our really unique staff. A third of our teachers are from German-speaking Europe, and that will probably always be about the ratio that we have, maybe sometimes more. And so it's a really, really critical component of organizational health to make sure that they are heard, that their unique skills, they're trained differently, and they come from a different system, and we want to make sure that we are able to fully take advantage of, in the best sense of that term, those skills. And so we sent out a series of questions ahead of time, and then just had this really wonderful panel discussion, and took a lot of notes and heard some things that were just really enlightening to us. I'll give you a small example. One of the teachers described the fact that in Germany, kids don't line up, or that wasn't their experience, that kids line up, and we line up for everything here, right? And so something as simple as explaining to German teachers that we line up here, and then it came around to a different conversation is, do we need to line up? And could we say that by third grade, we're gonna, it's about independence, right? Lining up to go from, say, your regular class to your specialist. could our students do that on their own? It's just a very small example, right, of a way a German teacher might think about something, that they're just sort of observing what we do, asking what we do, and us needing to be open to those conversations, right? It's just, that's a simple example. And there were much more complex things that we talked about as well, but I just bring that up as an example of ways that we need to think. And so that'll be an ongoing conversation that we have. German immersion norms, that's part of the strategic plan to establish those. Yasmin sent out a really interesting survey earlier in the year, asking some really fundamental questions, including what does immersion mean to you, and a number of other things. And it was really, really enlightening to see how teachers respond to that. I had a teacher say to me in a post-observation meeting this year that until she came to the US and took this job, she didn't know what immersion education meant. She is a German teacher and was trained to teach there. She knew what DAF education meant, right? Teaching German in Germany to non-native speakers, but that's not the same thing as an immersion environment outside of Germany. And so something as fundamental as the core mission of our school is not necessarily clear to all of our teachers, or we can't articulate it all in the same way. And so it's really clear that that is an ongoing conversation that will never be finished. And so one of the things, we've only had one meeting, it's a newly formed task force. And one of the things that we talked about at that meeting was to articulate some goals, what we are calling low-hanging fruit, to establish for next year and beyond. Things as simple as respecting all levels of German and English proficiency, having stock phrases for non-German speakers. So like a little thing you could carry on your keychain or a lanyard that, you know, to remind yourself so that the next thing is possible German in the hallways whenever possible. If you don't know German, that you, even if you're an English speaking teacher, that you can greet children in German, for example, and that all hallway signage be in German. So it is mostly in German, but not exclusively. And so just being a little more rigorous about that, so that when we say immersion, we mean both orally and visually immersive, whenever we can.
I noticed the new signs you have on the office doors that say, speak German with us.
That is the front office staff who are so awesome, right?
So good job.
It's fantastic. I'm very aware of the time here. I'll just mention here so we have this on two places, the meeting with international teachers. No, we don't, because I'm on the wrong slide. So we have a couple of main emphases for the coming year. One of them is immersion and continuing to work with the task force. And another one is biliteracy, which has different meanings in different contexts. For us, it means, of course, teaching kids to read in both English and German. So I'll just give you a simple example of why this is a question. So you saw some of the data about how our kids are reading in third grade. We do not introduce English literacy until third grade. Their scores on the MCAs in third grade are not awesome, right? By fifth grade, they're well above the state average. By eighth grade, they're just blowing the state average out of the park. So it's become sort of a trope in immersion education and here at TCGIS as well, that our kids don't do well in third grade, but by fifth grade, they're fine. By fourth grade, they're also doing okay. So the question then is, why are we okay with that? Are we okay with the fact that kids are maybe not above state average in third grade? And are they suffering in any way? And so that's a focus we're going to spend some time on this year, is starting with, do we even have a problem? Is it even a problem? And then if so, how do we address it? We're not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of research on this. And one really exciting thing that we're collaborating on, Eva Baumeister, one of our teachers, has a colleague, I don't know what the context is that she's known her in before, but she's at the University of Calgary, and she's doing a big research project right now on reading levels in immersion schools, and she's looking for schools to participate. So we'll be participating, we'll be one of her schools, and looking at the books that are used in immersion schools and at the reading level is appropriate, the reading level of the books is appropriate to the reading level of the students. So it's really exciting. We're not funding that. The University of Calgary is funding that, but we get to benefit from the data that comes from that. So I'm really excited about that. So just wanted to just kind of put that out there, that that was one of the things that we talked about. I'll be spending a big chunk of the summer doing research on what is best practice and what that looks like for us. It's not as straightforward as you might think, because immersion, biliteracy in the immersion environment can mean a lot of things, because we are not, for example, a dual language immersion school. We're not a school that has native speakers of Spanish, say, who are learning English half the day, and native speakers of English who are learning Spanish half the day. That's a totally different model than ours. And a lot of the research is done in those environments. And so you have to be kind of nuanced in reading some of the research. But anyway, this is again, one of those things that won't ever be quite finished. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, and then we're going to spend 5 minutes each on each of the surveys. Let's start with the org health survey, Ashley. I'm going to share it here.
I think while Kirsten's getting ready, just to say, you know, this is our second year doing this data and collecting this internally. And so we're just slowly learning how to do it well, you know, but it's an exciting thing to be able to manipulate the data a little bit more and look in details that we weren't able to potentially do before when we were using an outside.
And what you'll see, here is we attempted for both surveys to cluster the questions into thematic chunks to make them maybe make a little more sense. And then Ashley took last year's data, and so you'll see side-by-side comparisons of the data from last year to this year. So it's, again, it's not something we're going to be able to dive into much here in the next few minutes, but I hope you might take the time to look at it. Just put a lot of effort into that part of it, and it's useful to see what kind of progress we're making. So professional development, we're doing better from last year in terms of whether staff think that professional development helps them, it supports their work a little better. So we will, are we, I'm guessing we're not entertaining an extension. Okay, you did not hear that from me. So I'm gonna just move along here because you all have access to this, okay?
I think just going forward, instead of like sending a slideshow with like hundreds of slides, do a summary of 2 or 3 pages and just bullet point trends, weaknesses.
This is not hundreds of slides. This is a summary.
Mm-hmm.
This is a summary that has about.
I went through it and all I saw was pie charts. Millions of them. You know?
Is this a different slide deck, maybe?
No.
This is the one which you sent in your email as attachment. I clicked on it, and it's like, I saw 70 slides with just pies.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the data is presented.
Yeah, but that's why, if you can kind of summarize the data, aggregate it, and then just show the strengths, weaknesses, and trends, that I think that would be much more helpful.
Yeah, Luber, I think, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think, like we said, we've pulled thousands of slides and thousands of data as we're looking at this, both as department, we're looking at international staff, and we're looking at staff as a whole. This presentation does have us pulling out themes that administration wants to look at and work on this year. So I think Kirsten and I kind of tried to do that. I get us a lot of data and we'll try to push through a little quicker. But these were things and topics that we found fascinating, that we want to make goals for our administration on, and that we're using throughout the year. So it does not have all of the data points from the organization.
But if I'm hearing you, Libra, what you're suggesting is a narrative summary of what we're seeing in the data is blah, right? So that you don't have to interpret the charts. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just, yeah. So feeling supported, valued, and heard. I think what's great here, is that we did increase in the amount of percentages that of folks who agreed from last year to this year. So if we are to group the don't agree or the agree, strongly agree, slightly agree together, last year we're at 90.4, this year we're at 93.2. So we see a slight uptick. In addition to, you can see here that there is no disagree or no strongly disagree on this year. And so I think that's an impressive mark to be able to look at.
Especially given the year we had.
I think our staff are mostly feeling supported by parents. They have pretty consistently. We have a strong community at TCGIS, and that points out our values. I'm going to click on Kirsten. I feel like I belong at TCGIS. We see a decrease here. And I think we'll point out a little bit later in our international staff, what's fascinating here is we see a decrease. We can't compare to last year's data because we didn't separate out, but we see a significant amount of our international staff feeling like they don't belong at TCGIS. And so that's something that we want to look at and work with our international staff to make them feel more connected and a part of our community.
I'm just gonna move us forward a little bit.
I want you to go back to slide 11 because I think that's actually a very impressive slide. Feedback from staff is acted upon by administration. If we were to group these together by slightly agree, strongly agree, slightly disagree, we improved significantly this year over last year. Last year we were at 69.2% agreed. This year we're at 83.1%. And I think we've done, I think that shows a great deal of work on administration of connecting, listening, having open office hours, a little bit more connection with our deans. They're having more staff meetings and things like that. And I think that's actually a really impressive slide to think about and look at. Hopefully we are responding to what our staff are telling us.
So I think we can just, I'm a little not sure of how to proceed here, Julie. We have literally.
How much time do you think you would need?
Well, a lot more than we have to give it any kind of, and so I'm happy. People have all of this, right?
Would you like to present it in August?
Sure.
Or what are your ideas?
I just think we're either going to be racing through it when people are completely exhausted and have no ability to absorb anything, or we're going to need to make a motion to extend the time, and I don't think anybody wants that. So that I don't mean to be, but we've got 3 minutes left, and we haven't even. We're on slide 11 of several dozen in this survey, and
that's my point.
And we have a second survey as well.
Just to compare this with the business world, if you do this in the business world, you would lose any interest and everybody would leave the meeting after 5 minutes. You need to be able, if you present something, you need to be able to put it on 3 slides, summarize it, and that's it. And then make your point in those 3 slides. Because all this data, by the time you go through strongly agree, disagree, add them all up, compare, that's in a presentation like this, as an executive presentation or like a comprehensive presentation, that doesn't bring anything over for me at least. So I don't want to fight this, but at the end of a meeting like this, 3 hours, and now we can get bombarded with this. Sorry, that's just.
Yeah, I think that's feedback they can take and consider. I do think there was a lot of compilation that went into this, and I went through and
absolutely,
yeah, I was intrigued with looking at it, especially what happened, comparison of last year to this year. I think it's fantastic to see the improvements. And yeah, this organizational health survey is super comprehensive, and our parent survey was extra comprehensive this year. Fascinating to read that as well on your own time. And I think perhaps what we could do is revisit this in August. And I know that your team is already taking learnings from this and will be working on it through the summer, you know,
It's a big focus.
yeah. And I don't know, what do you think? Or do you-
I think that it's very, very in-depth, important information that on June 30th at 9:30 at night, after a very, very long year for everybody, we're not going to give it the time and respect it deserves. And I would love to do that at a later date.
Mhm.
But when we do it, like Lou Bear is saying, like 3 slides maybe, and the way that the admin team is taking it, you know, and like doing stuff with
So,
it.
so we can do that. I'm gonna push back a little bit that in one way, and that is, this is the most thorough board I have.
Yeah.
I've ever known. If we had done 3 slides, it didn't occur to us to do 3 slides,
No,
right?
I would be asking so many questions if you.
You would be asking so many questions.
And I know I
but
wouldn't
what
be the only
but
one.
But what I'm hearing is that you want to know the takeaways, right? What are we doing with it? And so some of that you got indirectly by seeing what we pulled out of it at our administrative retreat. And so we can certainly do the amount of work. You probably don't see the amount of work. This doesn't seem like so this isn't the whole survey. The whole survey is literally
Yeah.
I understand
like
that.
multiple hundreds of slides.
I understand that, Kirsten, and I
Yeah, no, I
understand
get
that the
it.
results, you use those results in order to
Yeah,
to
so
work with the admin staff and to
we'll do
improve
that
things.
we'll do that for August.
But when you come to a board as an executive summary talking about this, then you need to kind of like.
Yep, we can do that for August.
I think that timing would be really good too. That it'll
We also
reset kind of,
don't-
okay, where were we at the end of last year? You know, how was the organizational health? How were the parents feeling? And
We also don't
where are we
have
going?
everything we needed from we just got the family survey. You know, these all of these results came pretty late to us.
And I
Yeah,
think
just like
yeah,
earlier this week or the end of last week. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of data to analyze in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Ashley, I'm wondering if you want to go back to the contract model. I'm teasing.
What do you mean?
We used to have an external firm do our surveys.
Yeah, she told me that. Like,
But it cost a lot of money and it wasn't
It wasn't
as nearly as informative.
nearly
as
as
this.
thorough or well
So,
put together.
All right,
we
well,
can be more succinct in August.
sounds great.
And maybe we can.
And I
put
think
that
the
up on
parent-
agenda a little bit
Yes.
earlier in the evening.
Yeah, it's a lot to squeeze into June.
Okay.
The June meeting is,
We had
yeah.
a lot of business to take care of tonight,
Mhm.
Hubert.
Yeah. And we had
Sounds good.
cupcakes.
Well, fantastic work. Director Christensen, I can see positive changes that you're making, so you and your administrative team. All right, it is 9:33. Does anyone have any new business? If not, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.